It's the 24th of November, 2021, and our reading in 1 Chronicles today is in chapter 19. In the course of time, Nahash, king of the Ammonites, died, and his son succeeded him as king. David thought, I will show kindness to Hanun, son of Nahash, because his father showed kindness to me. So David sent a delegation to express his sympathy to Hanun concerning his father. When David's men came to Hanun in the land of the Ammonites to express sympathy to him, the Ammonite nobles said to Hanun, "Do you think David is honoring your father by sending men to you to express sympathy? Haven't his men come to you to explore and spy out the country and overthrow it?" So Hanun seized David's men, shaved them, cut off their garments in the middle at the buttocks, and sent them away. When someone came and told David about the men, he sent messengers to meet them, for they were greatly humiliated. The king said, "Stay at Jericho till your beards have grown, and then come back." When the Ammonites realized that they'd become an offense to David's nostrils, Hanun and the Ammonites sent 1,000 talents of silver to hire chariots and charioteers from Aram Naharaim, Aram Ma'akah, and Zobah. They hired 32,000 chariots and charioteers, as well as the king of Ma'akah with his troops, who came and camped near Medeba, while the Ammonites were mustered from their towns and moved out for battle. On hearing this, David sent Joab out with the entire army of fighting men. The Ammonites came out and drew up in battle formation at the entrance to their city, while the kings who had come were by themselves in the open country. Joab saw that there were battle lines in front of him and behind him. So he selected some of the best troops in Israel and deployed them against the Arameans. He put the rest of the men under the command of Abishai, his brother, and they were deployed against the Ammonites. Joab said, "If the Arameans are too strong for me, then you are to rescue me. But if the Ammonites are too strong for you, then I will rescue you. Be strong and let us fight bravely for our people and the cities of our God. The Lord will do what is good in his sight." Then Joab and the troops with him advanced to fight the Arameans, and they fled before him. When the Ammonites saw that the Arameans were fleeing, they too fled before his brother Abishai and went inside the city. So Joab went back to Jerusalem. After the Arameans saw that they had been routed by Israel, they sent messengers and had Arameans brought from beyond the river with Shophach, the commander of Hadadezer's army, leading them. When David was told of this, he gathered all Israel and crossed the Jordan. He advanced against them and formed his battle lines opposite them. David formed his lines to meet the Arameans in battle, and they fought against him. But they fled before Israel, and David killed 7,000 of their charioteers and 40,000 of their foot soldiers. He also killed Shophach, the commander of their army. When the vassals of Hadadezer saw that they had been defeated by Israel, they made peace with David and became subject to him. So the Arameans were not willing to help the Ammonites anymore. Amen. Now, this chapter begins with very good intentions from David, King David, verses 1 and 2. His old friend who had been kind to him, the Ammonite king, Nahash, what does David want to do? He wants to send kindness and sympathy to his son. I mean, that's a good thing to do, isn't it? But quickly, for whatever reason, people can be very suspicious and they can see ill intentions where they are not intended. And they're very suspicious of David, maybe because of his might and success and the favor of God upon him. That's sometimes the case. Well, they quickly misunderstand what's going on. Verse 3. Haven't his men come to you to explore and spy out the country and overthrow it? This leads to an act of terrible humiliation that they inflict upon David's men. Verse 4, David now is deeply offended. Verse 6, and before you know it, there's conflict. Verse 6 and following. The Ammonites and the Arameans, they muster for battle. And verse 8, David must respond. And he does. And he sends his greatest military men into the battle. The two brothers, we've seen them before, Joab and Abishai. Even David himself, verse 17, by the end, is at the head of his army in battle. And the result, well, with God's help, and it's Joab of all people in verse 13 who makes a tremendous statement there. The Lord will do what's good in his sight. It's Joab who understands that there's no way they can win this battle without God's help. But with God's help, they do. There is a total crushing defeat of the Arameans and the Ammonites. Verse 18. Though thankfully, it's a great cost, but thankfully, peace is restored by the end. Verse 19. Suspicion, offense, rage, conflict. These things are pretty normal in the world, in a fallen world that is suspicious of God and in rebellion against God. We are enemies of God. How easily we become enemies to one another. And these qualities of offense, becoming offended, and rage, they have become really normalized, haven't they? They have become, I'm not sure if they're acceptable, but it's happening all the time in our society, and people seem to shrug their shoulders as if to say, well, so what? That's just the way it is. That's happening in the world around us in Great Britain today. And of course, the church is so vulnerable. It's so influenced and affected by the world. We're catching up quickly. So many Christians now in church life are so easily offended and fly off the handle with rage over petty issues, left, right, and center. But we mustn't do that. We mustn't be like that. This chapter is a warning to us and surely inspires us to seek wisdom. We need that heavenly wisdom, not to be like this, not to be like the world, like these Ammonites were. David had to respond in the way that he did, but it was all so unnecessary and such a waste of time. And yes, God was with them and God was glorified. But oh dear me, if only they had had more wisdom, these pagans. And we need that wisdom in the church. In the book of James, it speaks of that heavenly wisdom that we lack, but we can seek for and God will give. James chapter 1, verse 5. And just listen to some of that heavenly wisdom as it is unpacked in James 1, 19 to 21. My dear brothers, take note of this. Everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. For man's anger does not bring about the righteous life that God desires. Therefore, get rid of all moral filth and the evil that is so prevalent, and humbly accept the word planted in you, which can save you.